I'm on public land in Florida getting after hogs right now, and we are getting into them. You're going to get to watch this hunting video on March 1st, but for now I'm going to send you back to the shop so I can discuss about all the gear and the information you're going to need so you can come down to Florida and find hogs on public land. Alright guys, Florida, public land, hogs. This is kind of the gear breakdown, at least what I hunt with, but it'll give you some ideas for your own kit. And then after I go through the gear, I will do a breakdown of stuff that you need as far as licensing, and then even give you guys some general ideas to kind of plan for. I'm assuming, I mean, obviously this is good for anybody that lives in the state too that's getting started in it, but I'm assuming this would be for folks wanting to come down to Florida. Maybe their wife and kids are going to Disney or something and they're like, yeah, we're not doing that, I'm going to go hog hunting or whatever. And maybe you got a rental car or something like that. So I'm kind of keeping all that stuff in mind for you, somebody coming in out of state. And this stuff will kind of get you through, aside from your normal basic needs, whatever you bring with you, clothes and whatnot. So anyway, how I'm going to kick it off is I'll at least just tell you about my bows and arrows. I have two specific hunting bows that I pretty much always run. You guys see these all the time. This one's more 60 to low 60s at my draw, and then this one is upper 50s. They shoot so similarly, I can shoot them interchangeably, so I never really know which one I'm going to hunt with. I just kind of pick one and run with it. And so shooting genuine sinew strings, of course, you guys have been following along with the channel, you guys know that. Shooting off knuckle, about as primitive as I can be, and of course all of this is kind of a retro primitive thing, so I'm hunting with the primitive gear. And then of course we're doing a lot of modern in-between stuff for comfort. Then of course my bobcat quiver that you guys see all the time, and I have a little bag right there on the back. I actually even started recently producing these for people to pick up. I figured it was something easy that they would probably make themselves, but I've had folks ask me for them, so I put them on the website. But in the little bag, I keep an extra finger tab, an extra bowstring, a lighter, a little micro flaker for sharpening arrowheads, a little plastic Ziploc bag to put my phone in if it starts raining, and then usually like a little block of pitch and some sinew just for some general repair. So there's actually quite a bit of stuff in that little bag right there, but it's really handy and it's always with me when I hunt. And then of course I've got my normal stone knife that I carry, and this one's more for finishing stuff off rather than a skinning knife, but it certainly works as a skinning knife. But it's always handy there in case I need to get on something and stick it in the last minute. And then my cane arrows with stone points, you guys have seen those before. And then always at the bottom of the quiver I've got my blue painted cane arrow, which is just a blunt ended cane arrow, and that's for if it's time to take some practice shots. Maybe it's nice to be able to shoot that blunt, or it is going to be small game season, as I'm going to be talking to you guys about. That's your best time to come down and hunt hogs on public land in Florida. Is probably going to be small game season, and so it's small game season. You can shoot rabbits and squirrels or raccoons or whatever you see, almost, as long as it's generally legal. So that's my normal hunting kit. And then I also carry in my pack or in the truck, and we'll talk, actually going to talk a lot about that as well, strategies. Might talk about it in this video or in a specific hunting video that'll be coming up next week. Going to be covering a lot of ground on foot, but also a lot of ground in the truck, going from spot to spot. And then I'll talk to you guys specifically about those strategies later on as well after we do the gear. But then I've got my normal stone knife that I use for skinning. It's a little bit more of a compact one that I like to throw in my pack. I like to bring my pack along, and typically I don't wear it because I'm not out for extended periods of time. A couple hours typically at most, so we're not going huge distances. If you guys watched the Arizona hunt where we were going out for javelina, I was wearing this because we were crossing mountain ranges and could potentially be gone all day, so we'd carry an extra coat in here, some water, snacks, you know, that kind of stuff that we might need. This, for the most part, is going to stay in the truck, but I put all my stuff in it, like my dry bag that has my camera gear. I don't specifically need the dry bag when I'm hunting public land, especially bouncing from spot to spot in a vehicle, but I use it every other time of year, so it's just my normal bag that I put my camera gear in and some other odds and ends, and then it just kind of slides down in here. But then what's handy about the pack is if I shoot one on public land and it's pretty far out, like it's a long walk, and you're gonna figure out real quick that some of these places you can get into, you can actually get in pretty far where you can't get a vehicle. In that case, then I will come back to the truck, get some water, get a snack, and then I'll grab my skinning knife and I'll put it in here. And then I also typically bring 1 or 2 black plastic garbage bags, and these are going to be really handy, especially if you're in a family vehicle or in a rental car or something like that. You can bone the meat off and put it right inside one of these, and then keep everything pretty darn clean, so you're not having to worry about getting blood on stuff. You can bone it off out in the field, put the meat in here until you can get it back and get it on ice in a cooler. And just because it's going to be probably January or February doesn't mean that it can't get warm. It's currently February, and it's 80 degrees out today, so it's quite warm, but that's still, you have plenty of time to bone the meat off, put it in a bag. And that's where like I said, I'll come back, I'll get the stuff that I need, I'll put the pack on, I'll walk out, I'll take care of the hog, put the meat in the bag, put it in here, and then I'll pack it out. Now, if it's a close recovery, if sometimes you'll have some of these spots that you don't have to go in very far at all, you might be driving down some of these dirt roads in these management areas and thick palmettos and actually have hogs run across the road. We've done that several times, so always keep your eyes peeled. I've literally seen them on the side of like the dirt trails that you're allowed to walk on or you're allowed to drive on. We've seen them on the side of the road rooting, and then as soon as they go into the palmettos, then we rush up, get in the palmettos, work around, and shoot them really close to the road. So typically, if it's within about 100 yards, maybe 200 yards from the truck, I always have a piece of rope in my truck, and this is going to be real handy for those close drags, and I already have it pre-cut. You want about 7 or 8 feet, and then I tie loops on the end, just like a lasso essentially, and then loop it back over itself. And you might, in some instances, be able to put it around its neck and get up under the jawline, but for the most part it doesn't stay on their necks very good because of the way their neck is shaped into their head. More times than not, you're going to put it on their top jaw around either tusks, or even the sows have, you know, little wetter teeth, and that usually hangs on pretty good on one side. It'll cinch down, and then on the other side it's got another loop, and I'll either make a loop with it and I'll step through it and put it around my waist so I can pull with it on my waist. And it does dig into you after a while, but sometimes if you get tired, that's an easy way to pull. Otherwise, I'm going to pick up a nice stout little stick, sometimes even saw one off with my stone knife, saw around it, and then break the stick on each side. Have a nice stout stick, put it on here, and then I can hold it behind my back like this, and I can walk and pull, because trying to just grab a hold of a wild hog, they don't drag very well just hanging on to legs and stuff like that. It's just a big old block of meat. And so, I mean, you get a deer, at least if you shoot a buck, you got some horns that hang on to, that helps. A doe, you're hanging on to back legs that are kind of long and they give you some distance. Hogs, short little legs, you're kind of bent over, otherwise you're picking up all the weight. So otherwise you're bent over trying to drag them, and the short little legs, you're running the hindquarters up the back of your heels all the time. Get you a piece of rope. Trust me, you will thank me later. It takes up no space. Cut it 7-8 foot long. You will find a use for it. But that's always staying in the truck. Again, if it's up close. If I'm always going to have some sort of flashlight in the truck in case I have to do a night recovery. That kind of goes without saying. I think everybody at this point hunts, they carry a flashlight. I very rarely ever use it. But on occasion I have to go in and do a night recovery if I shot one right at dark. I more or less like to try to hunt as much mornings as I can, but if you're down here on a trip, or if I'm on a trip somewhere, you're going to want to optimize and hunt evenings as well. So keep that. And then again, that's my normal dry bag that this kind of stuff's going to go in. This is personal comfort stuff. Of course, don't forget your toilet paper. nothing ruins your trip worse than having to go real bad. I always keep, you guys have probably seen this before, so this is another little comfort thing that I recommend, is a roll of Leuco tape. This stuff is really, really sticky. If you're out putting on a lot of miles walking, you're gonna get some hot spots somewhere. And especially if it's warm, you can start chafing. It happens all the time on hunts, and it happens to other people. It happens to me. Don't think that you're too tough and you can suck it up and go through it. Sure you can, but a little roll of tape is going to help, because as soon as it starts to hot spot, you can cut off a piece of this tape and cover that hot spot. So now whatever is chafing against you or rubbing against you is now rubbing against this. You can even put a couple layers of it on, and it's really going to cut down on those hot spots. And I'm telling you, it just is miserable knowing that you're going to be walking several miles a day on some of these back trails or through these swamps, and it's just, something's just digging on you. It's obnoxious. But I've also then learned, if I'm going to have the Leuco tape, bring a little disposable razor, because if you got a hot spot in your ankle or on your leg or something, and it is on a spot that's got a lot of hair, you're going to lose that hair anyway. With this Leuco tape, it's going to stick. But then when you put it on, as the Leuco tape starts to wear and move, it's actually going to start pulling all your hair, and it's going to hurt just as bad and be just as annoying as it would be if it's just rubbing and chafing. So I always just have a little spare backup razor. If I got a hot spot, I'll just dry shave it really quick, put some tape on it, and I'm telling you, it'll be a game changer after about 3 or 4 days into walking and having hot spots. This stuff, everybody's like, oh, I don't need bug spray. I'm gonna tough it out. You know, that's gonna ruin my hunt. I hate bug spray. You're hunting in Florida. I'm telling you, you're gonna want bug spray, and I would get something like 40% DEET, and you are going to spray yourself with this, because if people are like, well, the animals are gonna smell you. If they can smell this, they can smell you anyway. You're gonna hunt the wind one way or another. I wear bug spray all the time and still get up and shoot stuff all the time. You're gonna want this, I promise you. Even if it's January or February and it's cold, you may not have much for bugs, but if it's warm, especially, even if it is chilly, you get down into some of these swamps and you'll stir up quite a nest of mosquitoes. And I'm telling you, what really sucks is trying to be on a hog and get really close, and all of a sudden and you're trying to hold really still, and now all of a sudden you've got 20 mosquitoes that are all over you and just biting you and driving you nuts. It's so hard not to be wanting to move and flick them away. And aside from mosquitoes, the ticks and the chiggers at different times of year, depends if we had a good frost or not. Sometimes, like I said, it could be 80 degrees when you're here, it could be 20 degrees, I don't know. It definitely varies this time of year. If we've not had a good frost that year, the ticks and the chiggers can be an absolute nightmare, and you will itch for weeks. You can get hundreds of little seed ticks on you. Trust me, bring bug spray and use it. And then also, if you're planning on being out quite a bit, the sun is a lot more intense even in the wintertime than you think. It doesn't hurt to have some sunscreen, as you're going to start getting real red around your face and your neck. It's going to wear on you after a few days. It's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. Okay, then what I wear, you guys know my footwear. I'm always wearing moccasins. I want something that I can get and slip around through the trees or through the leaves and all of that, and try to be as quiet as I can. I like to be connected to the ground. Me and boots don't get along so well. You really don't need boots down here. If you're comfortable in them, then I guess go for it. I like to stay cool. These help me stay cool. I'm also not afraid to walk through water, as you guys see. You might have to cross water. These, to me, dry out so easy. There's nothing in them. It's all just leather. Leather bottoms. You can do the crepe sole bottoms too if you want. But then these will dry out a lot easier in an afternoon. You can set them up. They'll dry out in the sun, and they're not going to stay wet as long as boots do. And obviously they're a whole lot quieter when you're trying to make those final stalks to get in really, really close. I love quiet footwear, so I'm always wearing those. And then important, even if it's warm, long pants. You're thinking, I'm going down to Florida, I'm going to hunt in shorts. My buddy Joe McConnell made that mistake. I've made that mistake. A lot of people have. You think it's going to be warm. Sometimes it is cold again. could be cold in the morning, but you're like, man, it's going to be warm. I'm definitely going to wear shorts. I'm going to advise against it. Number one, because of the bugs, but also a lot of these places have a lot of greenbrier that's just going to tear you up when you're walking through it. And the pants, typically you can get through it unless you get really tangled up in it or into the really big thorns. You can typically just go right through it with pants and it's not a big deal. But if you're in shorts, it is just going to shred your legs up. And then also, people don't realize that the stems, the stalks of the saw palmetto, they're called saw palmettos for a reason. They're like hacksaw blades. So they are real sharp, and they're not just going to slice you open, but if you are wading through the palmettos, which is very common when you're hunting hogs, you're going to have to get into palmettos. Those sawtooth hacksaw stems are going to slice you up after a period of time. So I'm telling you, please wear long pants. You will thank me later. Okay, that should be it as far as the gear. Now I'm going to give you guys some information as to ideas of places to hunt, and then also the licensing stuff that you're going to want to need going into this. I'm going to make it about as simple for you as possible. As far as licensing goes, that's really straightforward. Okay, so there's no tags and there's no bag limit on hogs, unless it's in a very specific management area that says so. Again, the details may vary a little bit, but generally what you're going to need is a general hunting license. So if you're non-resident, just a non-resident hunting license. And then if you're bow hunting, you're going to need the archery permit or the archery stamp. And then since you're hunting on public land, a management area, then you need the management area stamp as well. So that should be the only three things that you need, are the general hunting license, an archery permit, and then the WMA, Wildlife Management Area stamp. And after that, you should be good to go. You guys have heard me already talk about January and February. That is your typical small game season in Florida, and you're gonna likely want to hunt during small game season if you're coming down here to do public land hogs. It's typically going to be better than the general hunting season, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. The better management areas, the wildlife management areas, the WMAs, and you're going to want to get on the Florida website for hunting and find a map of all the different management areas. And I'll throw you up a map here in a little bit, and we'll talk about different areas to hunt. Look at each individual management area, and what you will notice is a lot of the better ones have quota hunts during the normal hunting season. So you would have had to put in for a quota, and if you draw the quota, then they're going to give you like 3 or 5 days, sometimes it's 9 days, to hunt that particular management area in that season. Now that's primarily for deer hunters, but you're allowed to hunt hogs as well. If you're coming down to deer hunt, then that's pretty much what you're going to do. But nobody's really coming down to Florida for the most part to deer hunt. If you're coming to Florida, you're going to hog hunt. But the local deer hunters, they kind of live for those quotas. That's their opportunity to hunt. So if they put in for an area that they want and they draw a 3-day or a 5-day quota, they're probably going to hunt all of those days. And what happens is you go into some of these management areas and it is flooded with people. You will literally have, you can't even walk these roads without having a tree stand. Somebody in a tree stand wearing blaze orange, 20 yards off the road, waving at you mad because you're walking down the road. They expect on these quota hunts that you will be in before daylight, and then you come out like at lunchtime and go back in. Everybody expects that when they're in their tree stand and it's breaking daylight, nobody should be walking through the woods. And there's a million people in there. Trust me, you don't want to be hog hunting during that time. But those areas that have the quotas, because they have such limited seasons during the normal season, the ones that are closed down almost all hunting season long, except for those 3 and 5 day hunts, and they usually have a few of them, those are generally going to be the management areas that have the most animals. But then the trick is, during small game season, when it opens, you're allowed, almost all of these, it may even be every management area in Florida at this point, but I'm not sure. But most management areas have a small game season of some type, and the dates do vary a little bit, but it's typically always around January, February. Even some can be into December, I've seen. Sometimes they end late, sometimes they start late and then they're very short, just a couple days. But what I'm saying is those management areas that have the short quotas oftentimes have the most animals in them, but you don't need a quota for the small game season. So you can go in small game and hunt hogs and not have the huge amount of people, and you're typically going to have, again, that higher animal count. Hopefully that kind of made sense to you. Now, there are other places that are open that are just like a general hunting management area, and after the first 9 days, let's use, I think Rich Loam or Green Swamp are great examples of that. They'll do like a quota for the first 9 days. Then after the first 9 days, it's open for anybody to go in, and so that's nice. At least there's a place to go, and that's going to typically be during December, and that's nice for a place for people to go. The problem is it's being overhunted all the time, and so therefore in those general open hunting areas there's typically less animals. So you're going to want to do a little bit of research per these different management areas and pick one that looks like it's probably not going to get hit nearly as hard. Now, another thing that you are going to really want to note about some of these general hunting areas, like Rich Loam specifically, is they run dogs in there after the first 9 days in the general season opens up. There's a culture of people down here that run dogs for deer and hogs, and so those are places that dog hunters go, and they can turn dogs loose. So if you're wanting to go in there and hunt and still hunt around, there's a very good chance that dogs are going to be running around and pushing animals everywhere. You're going to end up really frustrated. So that's why I'm saying avoid all of that time of year. Stick to the small game season where there's no dog hunters and no deer hunters going to be in there. And your first week of small game season is usually directly after the general season or a quota hunt. And so a lot of people want to get in there still the very first week, and you can find some success doing that. But generally what happens is there was just a whole bunch of people in there the week before doing their deer hunts or their dog hunts, so the place is already stirred up and possibly run out. And then if you're trying to be there opening day, so is everybody else wanting to get in there. Everybody's still excited to hunt, so you still have a lot of people and the place has been pushed out. My opinion, wait till later in the season when everybody's kind of tired of hunting, and then go in later season. I typically save my Florida public land hog hunting for later on in the season when everything starts to settle down and then less people are in the woods. You're still going to encounter people, but that's the strategy that I would recommend. But again, you're typically going to be looking at January and February for those, and then it runs maybe to March 1st, but it's not the same exact dates in every management area. You're going to want to look at those management area maps and then pick out specific ones that you're going to be in that area anyway, whether the family's going on vacation and you want to take the car and go hog hunt for a day or two, or maybe you're down visiting family or a friend and you want to go and you're going to hunt in that area. Look for management areas in that area that you want to hunt, and then start looking at season dates. Do they have a small game season, and do they allow hog hunting in the small game season? That's generally a yes on both of those. And then also keep in mind, obviously I'm bow hunting, this may apply to you differently. If you're going to hunt with a modern weapon, you can hunt with bows and you can hunt with muzzleloaders, but during small game season, you cannot hunt with centerfire rifles. Now, some general area ideas that I would recommend. I'm not even really going to give you specific management areas, because then we're just going to have everybody watching the video and everybody's going to flock to those same exact spots. Do your own research, pick out your own management areas. But these are the general areas that are going to have your highest hog populations in general. So pick where you want to pick, do a little bit of scouting while you're hunting on the first day, cover a lot of ground, but typically you're going to be looking at the Gulf Coast, what they call the nature coast, and I would say about Crystal River on the Gulf Coast, and then going up until it makes the big bend, going up towards, kind of Tallahassee. There's lots of different places in the state that have hogs. On that nature coast all the way up is good areas. Also, kind of center of the state, lots of hogs in that green swamp, rich loam kind of area. And then even a little bit more north of that, they're very wet sort of places. But again, look into it. A lot of them allow the dog hunting. You might be coming in after a bunch of dog hunters have been in there. It might not be what you're looking for. And then South Florida's got a lot of hogs, but there's also a lot of people in different areas. Keep this in mind too. The closer that you are to a bigger city, the more pressure that place likely has. So if you're willing to push out, 1, 2, 3 hours away from some of these larger cities, you're probably going to get into more animals. And then keep that in mind too, as you're bringing along food and snacks and stuff for the day. You'd say, well, I'm in Florida, I'm probably not going to be very far from, a gas station or a restaurant or something to stop and eat. Make sure you fill up with gas. There are some of these places that it's going to be an hour until you get somewhere. Once you get in there, it would take you at least an hour to come back out for fuel or something to eat. So plan accordingly. So that'll at least give you some general ideas of places to look. Now, in the video where we do the hunt, I will do a little bit more of a breakdown on certain different habitats that you're going to want to hunt, because I'll be able to show you those habitats. But you're typically going to be looking for more swampy areas. They want to be around water, so they can be anywhere up on the sand hills and rooting around, but for the most part, they're going to really homestead and live in areas that have some sort of a water source. And if it's the whole management area is wet, then they can just be anywhere. That doesn't seem to make any difference at that point. You could be just driving along, like I said, in thick palmettos, and they could be out. Or if it's a high and dry sort of a management area, you're going to be looking at maps trying to pick out individual water holes, and then you're going to be doing a lot of driving from water hole to water hole, and then circling around checking for a lot of sign. So be willing to get out and do a lot of walking. And if you're willing to go places that other people don't want to go, if there's a water source that's hard to get to, a long walk with no vehicle access, or through a lot of brush, or a nice clump of swampy land that's far away from everything else, if you're willing to get into those places, you're more willing to find the animals. But that doesn't mean that you can't be driving down the road. Like I said, this happens all the time, especially in small game season, late season. You can be driving down the road and literally see hogs cross the road right in front of you on the main trail, or we actually be rooting early in the morning on the side, and you can get out and go hunt them. So kind of hunt anywhere and everywhere, but you just be willing to cover a ton of ground. If you pull up to a spot and just say, okay, I'm going to hunt here today, and then you're slipping around real quiet and real slow like you're deer hunting, then sure, you could run into some, but typically these groups are going to be a little fewer and farther between on public land. You're going to want to cover a lot of ground. Just because there's hog sign there doesn't mean there's hogs there right now, because these hogs get pushed around a lot and they are very nomadic. So if there is a lot of sign, fresh sign in an area, but somebody came in yesterday and spooked them out of there, shot one, ran them off, that doesn't mean they'll come back because that's their home. They will go to a completely different area and start over. They are not dedicated to just one particular area to live. They're not just going to come back there because they want to. Sometimes they will if they're not spooked bad, but for the most part, once they're pushed out, they're just going to go somewhere else, and you're going to push them back and forth to different areas. So keep all that stuff in mind. We'll talk to you more in that video on the actual hunt, which will be coming up next week, so I hope to see you there.